Who's going to lead us off?
I guess I will because I chose the topic. So what I wanted to
Okay.
talk about today was something that a lot of my students who I once trained as kids and who are now young adults are talking to me about, which is how can I continue to try to improve in chess when I have other responsibilities now? I mean, how can I compete with these young kids who grew up with more opportunity than me? Because every single generation will always have more opportunity for training than the one that came before it. And you're going to be playing against young players whose parents are taking care of everything for them. For most chess players, that's how they start. And then they have to make this transition into young adulthood where all of a sudden they're responsible for their own lives, where they have responsibilities that it could include rent, that could include demanding courses in college, could include a job. And especially if you're trying to make it in chess, we all know that it's not cheap. I mean, you have to be traveling all across the world for tournaments. Trainers are expensive. I have personally contributed to that quite a bit. And so I thought, given that we have the four of us here, Kostya and I of one generation, David from the generation before that, and Jesse from the generation before that, all of us who have made our lives around chess, and none of us who were homeschooled and force-fed chess from the start, I thought we'd all have interesting perspectives. Probably a lot of this stuff will surely change over time, and I know there's going to be challenges that young people face today that we wouldn't understand or I wouldn't understand. There's also going to be challenges that we face that they won't understand, but hopefully we can find some ways to give some words of wisdom for ambitious young people who are trying to improve and don't have, massive sponsorship or rich parents that are taking care of everything. So that's what I was hoping we could discuss.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, people that love chess, want to get into chess, but yeah, aren't like raised from their youth to dedicate their lives to chess and have all the resources
Right.
for them. They have it pretty easy, like when we look at it from that perspective. But yeah, most people they just get into chess, they already have lives, and now they want to figure out. Actually, we get this question a lot on the stream when people are like, "Can I make it in chess?" Or like, especially, what if I'm not a very good player? Can I still make a living from chess, just being in the chess community?
The answer to that is definitely yes, but it depends a lot upon your ability to teach and connect with people and also to market yourself. You can be really good at that, but if nobody knows who you are, and no one's going to know who you are based on your chess achievements if you're 1500, that adds another element to it that you wouldn't need to have if you were stronger. That does not mean you can't do it. It just means there's a more diverse skill set that's needed. And I know plenty of people who have made their lives from chess who are, 16, 1500, but they are passionate about it. They connect really well with aspiring learners. They can inspire people, especially kids and young people. And I think that if you love the game and want to make a career out of it, you certainly can. But if you don't have the chops to play professionally, which is at any moment maybe like 20 people in the world, you definitely can still do it, but you might have to tailor the way you approach it a little bit differently.
One technique I know of is I knew somebody who was a chess teacher, and he just claimed that he had a title he didn't have.
Okay.
That was
So
his.
you can just be a fraud.
That was his way, and that he taught lessons for years and years and years.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
But maybe we should differentiate what we're talking about, because I think with the chess boom especially, there's all kinds of people that we're seeing who are making good money who, I don't know, they're not 16, 1700 even. They don't have to be
Right.
that strong. But I think there's kind of two things. It's like, can you make a living at 1500? And I guess the answer is yes, and you have to have those skills that Sam mentioned. But I guess also what we're talking about is like, and I think this is what Sam's interested in. I don't know, he could tell us, but the kind of player who hasn't made it yet, is struggling financially, and then they have to make something like the top 20 in the world to actually start making money, at least just from tournaments. Is that right, Sam?
Well, yeah, partially, but also like let's say you've got someone who's young, who started like very young and got to whatever, maybe it's like 23, 24, even 2500 while they were still under their parents' dollars, so to speak. Now they've become an adult and they're trying to make it further in the world. And the jump from 1500 to 1600 is a hell of a lot cheaper than the jump from 24 to 25 and then from 25 to 26.
Right.
And how you can, if you're going to go full time, especially, how you can manage to get yourself these opportunities to improve, whether it be training or tournaments overseas and stuff like that, without having to do things that are massively harmful towards your development. So one thing that I hear a lot is, and I actually heard quite a lot when I was young, was if you want to be a professional chess player, you shouldn't be teaching because this is harmful for your game. While I'm not entirely sure I agree with that, even if I were to say, fine, that's true, if I don't teach, I don't eat. If I don't teach, I don't buy plane tickets. If I don't teach, I don't go to like, other parts of the world to play tournaments. And being able to find a way to finance your own goals in a way that's also helpful and constructive is really important. And even now that I'm a top grandmaster, US champion with Olympic medals, I still teach lessons. And even now that it's certainly no longer necessary for me to do from an economic point of view, I continue to do so. There's a couple of reasons behind this. One is I think that any concern about finances or money or anything about your well-being is corrosive thought. And I know a lot of people will just make draws in last round games because that's what they're used to. And that comes from there might have been a time in their life where, an extra $1,000 from finishing second instead of fourth would have been a really big deal. And they'll make a quick draw in the last round as a result, and then they're ill-prepared to fight in last round games. And that's something I never did. And if you have money in your back pocket that is not dependent upon the results you have, I think this frees you to play a much more aggressive and risk-loving style than you might otherwise be able to. And this is extremely important for your overall improvement. You need to be playing ambitiously and sharply and not trying to hold back or play like overly cautious or conservative chess. And I think in that regard, teaching helps a lot. And I would definitely recommend for any aspiring young person, start early. I mean, I started teaching I taught Josiah when I was like 16 or something, and he would have been 5. Like when I was before I was teaching chess before I had a driver's license, let's put it that way.
Yeah. So the goal is even beyond necessarily paying for your necessities.
Right.
Have a financial freedom to play the chess freely when you're playing and not
Absolutely.
worry about the financial implications of your result each time you're
Absolutely.
playing a game.
I mean, if you're coming into a last round game and you're looking up some of your opponent, and you're like, I really think the dragon is right for this guy. Like, it's very easy to just get terrified. I'm not going to do this. But if you know that you're not going to worry about your meals, it's so much easier to make this very risky and provocative decision, which you might believe in, but still not pull the trigger on if you were otherwise worried.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it.
I have a life experience that I think speaks very, very directly to this, in agreement with Sam's point, which is at some point I got the Sanford Fellowship, and then I thought, oh, so they'll like reimburse me my costs for tournaments. So I started going to tournaments the day before instead of the morning of the first round, which I had always done previously to not pay the extra night of hotel.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And instead of like wandering around town looking for cheap food,
Right.
I just said like while I'm playing the tournament, I'll just like buy the healthiest food that I want, no matter what it costs. If it's like, and if it's like close to the venue, so I don't lose a lot of time and energy during the tournament. And then I never managed to send in my receipts in the proper format, so I never got anything reimbursed.
Sure.
But I won so much prize money that year.
Yeah.
So much prize money from
Exactly.
one year to the next. I went from like, like an IM is normally going to earn like $300 a year in prize money.
Maybe a little more, but not much. Yeah.
I went from like $300 to like $20,000 or something like that. And it was like, what?
And that'll pay for organic groceries and a couple hotel nights.
Yeah, and that was just like showing up the day before.
Yeah.
And like eating freely.
Right. And so like even if we were to accept that teaching is harmful for your chess overall, I think it's much more helpful to be able to do the kinds of things you said, to be able to fly to other parts of the world that might have superior opportunities for you. Now that the US is actually doing fairly well with that, it might be less relevant for American viewers, but at the
for
time,
us, there was nothing.
Yeah, for me, there was very little, and for you guys, there was nothing.
Yeah.
Like I taught a lot in my gap year between high school and college. I mean, I grew up from a fairly well-off family, even by California standards, and they did not want me to be a chess player right away. They didn't want me to take a gap year before college. And while I definitely am incredibly appreciative of my parents for their support that they gave me growing up, And I also am appreciative of the way they treated me as when I was 18 then. They said, you're an adult, this is your life. And if this is what you want to do, you can go for it, but we're not subsidizing it. So basically, very quickly, I went from really not worrying about anything to all of a sudden, I've made, $15,000 in my life, and now I have to live on my own and pay rent. And I lived in a house shared with you, David, and you, Jesse, at the time when I was
Yeah.
18. And I have to be financing my own trips to Europe and stuff like that. And that was definitely a very valuable growth experience for me, but I think I learned a lot about how to push yourself forward in chess without breaking the bank. And one thing I would say is teach a lot, but also make sure that you are teaching people who are uplifting to your own chess. And this can be in two ways. One, you don't want to be teaching people for whom you're essentially teaching them just how to make the moves. There's plenty of jobs in the chess world for that if you're just looking for money, but if you're looking for ambition, you want to be teaching people where, yes, you're better than them and you have something to offer them, but they will occasionally ask questions that you don't know the answer to or that you can't figure out right away and that challenge you to think on your own during lessons. And so nowadays, when I teach my students or write my books, I always make sure that when I write my books, it's on a topic I want to research. I wanted to research pawn play one day. I wrote Small Steps to Giant Improvement. I turned around and won the U.S. Championship. And
you think actually writing the book could have even been helpful to
my
you?
last round game would have fit perfectly into Chapter 7. The game that won me the U.S. Championship.
Yeah.
Would have just literally fit right into Chapter 7.
So there you're teaching and you're earning money, but it's helping your chess.
Yes, that's the point. And while there's no doubt in my mind that the lessons I teach now, they are not as effective a use of time for me as just full-on training myself would be. They are better than sitting around and fooling around on my computer would be. And when I have a student, for example, I will say, if I'm at a training camp and I have a student staying in with me, for example, the first thing I do for warm-up in the morning is, all right, go to the printer, here's 2 sheets of paper, here's yours, here's mine, we're going to solve. And then we're going to compare solutions. And I think this is so great in a lot of ways. For one, it means I'm doing my normal training, which is a lot better than me sitting around and waiting for the guy to give the answer. I think it's inspiring for them to see. I mean, me personally, I never liked working with someone who's just going to solve this, solve this, solve this. It strikes me as like, the overweight gym instructor chowing down on fried chicken while you're running around. Keep running, keep running, keep running. Like, you want to be around someone who inspires you. And so I think being that person is helpful. And additionally, a lot of my lessons can be less structured than other trainers. And I'll just be like, here's something I was studying recently. For example, when I was writing my book on rook endgames, I would often teach a lot of lessons that were from eventually that book that came out. And endgames that I had already studied, but maybe wouldn't have remembered perfectly. I think what they say, if you repeat something 7 times, you remember it forever, I think was what the science said when I was a kid. I don't know if that's true or not, but let's assume it's sort of true. If I just teach like that, then I'm memorizing rook endgames. Like, there's ways that you can earn money and finance your goals in chess, because we all know that, like, if you want to really make it from IM to GM, it's a huge investment of time and money on your part. Being able to come up with the money side of that while simultaneously furthering your own career instead of harming it, I think is an incredibly important balance. I think that's something that a lot of people haven't understood. There's just this common knowledge, teaching is bad for your playing skills, you shouldn't do it. And I think it really does not appreciate the complexity of the challenges facing a lot of young people in today's world.
How about you guys, Jesse and Kostya? You've both taught lessons. Do you feel like how does it compare to what Sam says about teaching?
Oh, yeah, dude. I mean, first of all, I want to say, I was an older dude when I made it to GM. And yeah, there was a lot of lessons involved, a lot. And that was really before a chess boom. And one of the things that was going on then was you didn't have the ability to do Zoom lessons. I think Zoom lessons has changed the game entirely because you can access a much bigger market than if you were in whatever town you were in. Back in the day, you were just teaching the people in your own little town. And I definitely think for the ChessDojo training program, when I was thinking about the plus equal minus, the teaching, the plus teaching the minus as a key part of your growth, that was definitely, at least partly from my experience, but also just from the principle of plus minus equal, that teaching people helped. and doing like those videos I was doing, early days of chesslecture.com, for example, that was also very helpful to force me to articulate things in the same way Sam is saying that he did. And so, right, I feel like the thing of don't teach, it's a very old, kind of old Soviet thing, I feel, from or an earlier generation that gets said.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, at some point when I gave an interview, I took a year off from teaching when I got the Sanford Fellowship, because I thought that I was sort of subscribing to that school of thought, and I quickly realized that this was a bad idea. But when I made a little video sort of giving my adios to chess.com, and basically I said, I've been incredibly appreciative of the video work I've done here, but it's time. And now I have money that I don't need to work for, and I have this opportunity that I want to go after. Very quickly, I realized this was a mistake, and that I got back to teaching fairly fast. But it definitely helped me a lot to have to be forced to articulate a lot of these ideas. There were times when if I was freestyling a lesson or freestyling a video, I'd find that I made a mistake, and then if you publish anything on the internet that's wrong, people are going to call you on it pretty darn fast. And while I found it annoying at the time, looking back, I do think I learned a lot from like people saying, "Wait, this was wrong," and then I would go back. Also, there was an era when engines were very strong, but they were not perfect. That definitely helped a lot. And I know that my organization got a lot better when I started writing books. I was always fairly well organized, I want to say, but like, I don't know, David, you've seen my master database. It probably is a fairly good indication of how well organized someone can be. And yeah, so I think there's a lot of skills that go into that. And I'm glad that I started teaching as young as I did.
So yeah, for me, I would say right now, definitely having to balance, I would say not really just teaching, but really more of like the business side of things, being like a content creator, streamer. And a lot of that is like we can argue about whether teaching is like good for your chess, but at least it's like you're touching a chessboard, you're looking at chess positions. When you're setting up a stream or you're looking at graphics, you're doing all this like Twitch stuff, is like 0% related to chess. I went through this journey before when I was going for the IM title. I was living on my own, and I was an FM, and I was supporting myself by teaching lessons, like you guys. And I remember those days, and they were fun because like I didn't, I did a lot of teaching in the schools, which I definitely didn't love, because there you're not really like a hardcore chess teacher. You're more just kind of working with the kids and keeping them energized and that kind of thing. But I felt like, okay, I'm just paying my dues, and this will one day pay for tournaments. So like for me, it was totally worth it. Nowadays, things are much better in the sense that you have so many more options to earn money. Like eventually, I switched over to making a lot of courses, and I think that was great. And then obviously streaming became a thing, and then we have Dojo now. The Dojo training program is like our main thing. But yeah, the drawback is that all this stuff is like pulls you further and further away from chess, and so you need more time. Obviously, you have to dedicate time to actually working on the game. At least when you're teaching, you're preparing like lessons for students. You're looking at puzzles. You're trying to solve stuff yourself to put yourself in their shoes. So you're definitely staying active, and I would say that is way more useful for your chess than like thinking about content and videos and that kind of thing.
I remember also in my gap year between high school and college, someone was. It was funny. I had a conversation with two separate conversations with the same person over a different period of time, and on the first one, he asked me like, "How come you teach so much if you don't if you want to like learn to be a professional, if you want to keep improving?" And then a later one, this was I guess it was in Gibraltar. He was like, "How can you afford to go to every single tournament overseas that I'm seeing you in?" I'm like, well, if you ask one and then ask the other, it's like, come on here. Ultimately, I just decided it would be better for my chess to teach a lot, travel a lot, and play a lot than teach a little, travel a little, and play a little. And I think I was right. So, yeah.
Let me ask a question to any and all three of you.
Yeah.
Have you done anything for money that you feel like hurt your chess? Like, is there anything that you regret doing or you think sort of held back your development?
Oh yeah, I'm old enough to have regrets, David.
Yeah, but as Sam said, I mean, it's a balance. The thing is, like, ideally you would do nothing for money. You would just play chess all the time and travel. But obviously you have to make money to make that
There,
happen.
looking back, there were a couple students who I had short relationships with that I probably should have ended faster than they did. I think for a couple of them, they were the ones who ended it, but there have been a couple that I did as well. I don't want to say anything bad about them. They just had very different attitudes than I did towards chess improvement. I don't think they were bad people, but I just found that I was really, not only was I not getting anything out of lessons, but I was just like really just waiting for them to be over. Those, like, I think looking back, I wish I hadn't done that. There were a couple of times when there was some inconvenient flight, and there was a much more convenient flight that was much more money that I think I probably should have taken the better flight. But for the most part, like in terms of major regrets of doing something for money that I think was harmful for my chess, I don't really think so. There have been times I've regretted not spending more, but not times that I think I've ever done anything like really harmful for cash or worked for cash. To be fair, I haven't been a stripper yet. So,
There's always that.
yeah.
Oh, I think a stripper would be better than some of the painful moments. I think Kostya had the painful moments. I'll just say, like, when you teach kids who don't want to be taught, it's not, I don't know if it's bad for your chest, but it will crush your soul, man.
Getting your soul crushed is bad for your chest.
Yeah, do you know a lot of great chess players who walk around with crushed souls?
You are, in a certain sense, basically selling your time and selling your soul, and you try to be grateful for the opportunity, but inside it might be mental anguish.
Oh, dude, so enervating, so enervating.
And
Oh my God.
another thing I would say is when you're young and you don't have money, you still do have some, and you need to think about how best to spend it and where to cut costs and where to not. The things that I would recommend never ever cutting costs are also include your sleep, your mental health, your physical health, and your nutrition. These are all incredibly important. If you like, don't skip gym day because you don't feel like it. Don't, like, I don't know, don't drive places you can walk. Don't eat fast food. Like, don't eat cheap food. Like, these are things that ideally none of us want to do, but like you sort of feel like you have to make sacrifices somewhere. Those are the wrong sacrifices to make. There are other sacrifices you can make instead.
So anything that's a direct impact on your health.
Yes, your health is incredibly important. I mean, nowadays it's sort of been settled. Chess is a sport. The Olympic Committee considers it as such. This is a sport. You need to take good care of your body. A healthy mind and a healthy body are very much connected. And the same way, I've yet to see a brilliant all-time physical athlete who is just some big dumb Hercules with massive muscles and no brain. I don't think we're going to see very many great chess players who are all brains and no brawn either. And you really need to take good care of yourself. Sleep is important, nutrition is important, exercise is important. And Fischer is the first person to set this in motion, and now sort of every really serious aspiring chess player should take note of it.
Sam, what I wanted to ask on this topic of you is, I feel like you're in a really interesting spot. You're kind of been hovering around 2,700 for a long time, which is this amazing goal to have reached it.
Yeah.
And the thing that it's interesting to me is, in really so many fields, not just chess, but you look at music, swimming, tennis, it's just the top who are making money in terms of tournaments, right? It's just the top.
Yeah.
Nobody else. And so there's for the fans, they look at it and they're like, oh, these people are making a lot of money. But if you go down the ladder just a little bit, then you're turning into people who aren't making money.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I had some health problems the last year and my rating dropped a lot. There was a year where I made over $200,000 just from tournaments alone, not to mention all of like my other stuff, but that was a really good year. There's also been years where like I made almost nothing. And that was as, number 35 or 40 in the world.
So you can be rated number 35 or 40 in the world and make less than a living wage off of prizes.
Well, it depends on what you call a living wage. For Bay Area, I would say yes. Well, I mean, I could have made more if I was, playing in like random American Opens and like winning, $10,000 for Vegas every now and then. But like that really would be harmful for my chess. So Yeah, I mean,
I was shocked. I recently looked how much professional tennis players make.
yeah,
I was just like clicking around and seeing like what the number 100 tennis player makes,
yeah,
and then estimating what I think the number 100 chess player makes. Because
right.
the number 100 tennis player would have, they won't even have a plus record. They'll have played like 6 matches in a
Yeah,
year because, it's all
yeah, yeah,
elimination tournaments, right? So they'll have like a record 6 months into the year. This
yeah,
is like only because I was just
right.
looking just now. They're 6 months into the year.
Yeah.
And they'd have a record of like 4-3
Uh-huh.
or something like that,
Yeah,
right? They've played like 3 or 4 tournaments,
yeah,
7 games, and it would be like winnings, $190,000.
yeah.
And
It
I'm
is
like, oh my
it is a little
God.
bit different than in tennis. Absolutely none of your expenses are paid. Every single player has to pay for their hotel, like Federer has to pay for his hotel.
Okay.
Like you, so, and there's a lot of expenses. So that I think 190,000 does not tell the whole picture story, but yeah, I mean, I definitely know that like if you're a little bit less active and you're high 2600s as opposed to like mid 27s, your income will just drop like 80%.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was tough for me when I went through a tough period.
Well, Sam, what I wanted to ask with this is,
Mhm.
it seems like, let's say you're, 2,700, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And there's all these opportunities that especially have come up in the last couple of years. We can talk about
Right.
streaming. You've been writing some
Mhm.
books. There's these Chessable courses. And now
Yeah.
with Zoom, you can give lessons to all kinds of people. Maybe some wealthy dude from Saudi Arabia. Who knows? Something like that. So I guess the thing that's confusing, and we talked a little bit about this with the Karu. In the Karu's case, by the way, it was a weird podcast we did with him because we were talking about money with him as well.
Mhm.
And he did this incredible mind screw where he was like, yeah, I'm not going to play for the world championship, really. I'm not that interested because of my streaming career and I make more money there. And I was like, well, boss, this is your chance of a lifetime. In any
Yeah,
case,
it depends a bit on what your priorities are. I don't like to say I don't care about money because objectively that's not true. And also, I think it comes across as incredibly condescending to make a comment like that when you're
mhm.
coming from a place of opportunity and where you're doing well. But I think what you have to ultimately find what fulfills you in life. And if that is just increasing your bank account as much as possible, I mean, I guess go ahead, but like, I don't really believe that's what is going to make you a happy person. And I
Right.
think
So
that,
what I wanted to ask you, Sam, and especially in your particular spot, I think people I'm interested in, I think other people in art would be as well, is like, where you are, 2,700, you can dream about, suppose you have dreams of 2,750 and beyond and
yeah.
all that. But
Mhm.
in terms of making money, like making it to 2,710 isn't gonna change that
I can
much.
tell you right now that if I were to quit playing chess tomorrow, I would make a lot more money over the course of my life than if I were to continue playing chess. And I'm going to continue playing chess because it's what I love and it's the legacy I
Mm,
want to leave behind.
right, right.
And at that point, I mean, money doesn't buy you happiness, but it does buy you freedom. And at this point, money has bought me the freedom that I can keep playing chess and doing what I want to do and pushing myself for further goals. And that's what matters to me.
Right, right.
And if I were just a slave to the dollar, then I would just quit chess and only do commentary. And for me, or not commentary, but chessable and lessons and stuff like that.
Right,
But
right.
for me, I know what I find fulfilling in life, and it's pushing myself to be the best I can be as a chess player, and the rest is on the side. As for Hikaru, I mean, it's his life. All of us are going to at some point want to stop playing chess. For some, it will be sooner than others, and for some, their priorities will change. They might not play chess as much, or they might still love chess but want something else more. Hikaru's life is his life. I know that if I were in his shoes, I would be making different decisions than he is, but yeah, I don't want to judge him for being different than me.
Yeah. It's like that's true for each of us, right? That we
Right.
would make some different
And how do,
decisions.
how do you feel, Sam, about like the group of guys around you, around 2,700? Like, are they? I feel like I've met a lot of those guys, hung out, and like they go below 2,700. It's a bummer. They go back over. They're so happy,
Yeah.
and I'm just interested, like, what are their? Give us a sense of what those struggles are like, because I think a lot of them. Like let me put it this way: if I was 2,700 and I was working really hard and not making much money, I would feel resentment towards like the Gotham Chess and all these other people making money, hand over fist, and I'd be like, "What about
Yeah.
me? What about me, boss?"
Right. So I can tell you that one thing I experienced was when I was like 18 or so, and maybe like, let's say somewhere between 2450 and 2500, I was very resentful that women of the same rating as me were making massively more money, like not
Mm-hmm.
even remotely close.
All right.
And I sort of viewed that as grossly unfair. I grew up being taught that we should, have our genders be treated equally, basically under all circumstances, and I felt that that wasn't being done. Looking back, I'm sort of ashamed of how I approached the situation overall. One thing is, I will just say straight up, life is not fair. There's very unique challenges that women face that we'll never understand. There's challenges that we face that women will never understand. There's some ways in society that favor women, there's some ways that favor men. And if we just start yelling about every single thing that doesn't go our way and not appreciating the struggles that somebody else has, you're not going to be a happy person doing it. Looking at it now, the fact that Gotham Chess and the Botez sisters and some of these other streamers make more money than me, I absolutely don't care. Now, that's partially because I have everything I need, like I wouldn't mind having more money. I think most people wouldn't, but it's not going to radically change my happiness. And I think jealousy or envy is just a very corrosive emotion to human happiness. So I would definitely say, like, for people who are, let's say, in the 2650, let's say 2600 to like 2650 range, or maybe even higher, 2675, whatever you want to call it, who never did any like teaching or streaming or anything like that, who are unhappy that let's say successful streamers are doing better than them and economically. It's not that I don't feel sorry for you at all. I mean, I sort of do, given the amount of effort you put in, that like, players who are just not nearly as good at you are doing better in the world. But I think you should change your attitude and you'll be happier and you'll be more successful, is what I would say.
Yeah, I
And
mean, all those big streamers are bringing in so many players to the game, and
Yeah.
I mean, professional chess wouldn't really exist if people didn't watch or care, or if kids didn't watch or care
They're
about it. And
they're
so,
performing a very different service for chess than I am. I don't
yeah,
want to say one is more important than the other. I don't think either of us could exist without each other. We form a symbiotic relationship. And the best chess players get paid a lot more than the not as best chess players, and the best chess streamers get paid a lot more than the not as best chess streamers. And I just sort of see them as an alternate economy. I mean, it helps that I don't interact with their world at all. I don't have a Twitch account. I don't watch streams. I'm appreciative of what they do, and I stay out of it. Like it's just not my spot.
mhm.
And one thing I also would say is there's broadly speaking three ways to make a living in chess: chess playing, chess education and improvement, and chess entertainment. I don't know anybody who can do all three. I know plenty of people who can do two. I can do two myself. If you can do two, be happy with that. Do not try to tackle the third, is one thing I would say. And I'm happy that I've got playing and improvement, but not entertainment, and I'm not going to try to add it. So,
wait,
Let's
which two do we have? Education and entertainment? I'm trying to make clear.
I would say that
He's
you
not
guys,
guaranteeing that anyone has two. We might have zero,
right?
but he's saying we don't have three.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Well,
I
we
don't
definitely
think
don't have three.
I think there's literally zero people with three.
Sam, let's talk numbers for just real quick, just as an estimate. I'm going to give you three ratings, and I want you to tell us how much money these people would make, kind of on average. I realize it was going to be good years and bad years, but just on average. So a player who's just going from tournament to tournament. So I'm going to give you three ratings and tell me roughly how much they're making.
Okay, before that,
2,600.
can I just have you
Yeah.
specify what country they're from?
That makes it more difficult. Let's say they're from they're the West. How
Okay,
about that?
Western country.
Yeah.
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 20, and this is all FIDE ratings. So we're talking about 2,600, 2,650, and 2,700.
Okay, 2,600. I'm gonna say like 25,000 or so. 2,650, maybe like 40,000. 2,700, like somewhere like 90 to 120 would be my guess.
Okay, interesting. All right. And I'm going to admit
Sam?
and we're talking just playing, not chessable courses.
Yeah,
or
no,
anything
I got
like
it. Yeah, just play.
that. Right. Okay. Well, that's honestly
2,700, I
more
think,
than I
is-
thought it was going to be. That's definitely more than I thought it was going to be. So.
I don't think that's so substantial though. I mean, $20,000 for a 2,600 player. I mean, if you play
Yeah.
10 tournaments a year, averaging 2,000 a tournament isn't that hard. You'll get like whatever 750 for playing, and you might win one of them or two of them, and then yeah, I don't think that's so hard.
It's not great. Sam, I wanted to ask your advice on negotiating for conditions because
Yeah,
I
so
often email events and I'm like, please, do you have anything available?
yeah, so for me, it's a little bit of a different spot because I lost a lot of rating this past year due to the health issues, and I still fully believe I'm like 2730 strength. Like maybe I'm just too arrogant and I have to accept my place in life has decreased, but I still do believe I'm that strong and I want to play those tournaments. I'm at a point right now where I'm basically telling tournaments I'll effectively play for free if you put me in this event with strong players. So at this point, my only priority in the tournaments I choose is the quality of the chess I'll get. I mean, like I will happily play the Grand Chess Tour and donate 100% of my earnings to charity, like if they wanted me to do that. Like I would literally play it just for free.
So Vasif shouldn't just complain about Arjun. He should also complain about Sam.
It's funny. I saw that.
Bringing the economy down for everybody else.
It is funny. I saw that tweet, and while I'm largely in agreement with him, I'm very much guilty of doing the exact thing he is describing. But when in other times, I think you also do something of I do agree with Vicious point. You do a disservice to your fellow professionals when you play for cheap because even if you can, a lot of other people can't.
Yeah.
And so I definitely charge a pretty preposterous amount for private lessons, but when somebody comes to me and asks me if I'll teach them and I quote my rate, they might tell me I'm totally ridiculous and then I won't get the student. But if they then come up to some 2,500 and ask the same thing, and the 2,500's like, oh yeah, give me 150 bucks an hour or something. If they had come up to that 2,500 directly without coming to me first, they might have
Thought that was a lot.
right. And then as a result, I've done a service to the, let's say, lower rated teachers or trainers who
You've made all their other rates look really good.
yes. So
They've anchored them
yeah,
nicely.
I think that's a responsibility that you take on once you become like the top, essentially. But for players who are not top players, I think ultimately you should just be trying to play the tournaments that you enjoy. Because also, even if we were only looking at it from a financial perspective, my guess is if you just focus on playing the tournaments you enjoy, ask them if they'll like just give you a room or something, and if they say no, just paying for it yourself. I think you'll probably make more money than if you like haggle and then play a tournament you wouldn't want as much because you get 500 bucks for showing up. Yeah, I mean,
Also, generally, most organizers,
Yeah.
aren't rolling in money. So,
that is true.
So maybe at the 2750 level, they can ask for something that's
Right.
substantial in terms of their living costs
Right.
in appearance fees. But for like a 2600, 2650, as you said, they're going to
Yeah.
try and get what, $500? Like,
Yeah,
That's
and
not
it also
gonna make a
depends
difference.
because different tournaments have different economies. Like, I always prefer the tournaments that don't give any conditions and just have really big prizes and everything's just out in the open, fair is fair. So the World Cup, for example, no, everybody has to pay for their hotel, everybody has to pay for their travel, but it's like $6,000 if you lose round one. I like that model a lot. That is I like the transparency and I like the lack of favoritism and lack of schmoozing and stuff like that. But for other events, I mean, I've played tournaments where I've gotten like less than 10% of what someone else has gotten for playing the same event. Granted, that person might be Magnus, but like, still, I'm not the guy to look at if you want to talk about negotiating tough. My sense is you should play chess because you enjoy it. And if there's a tournament that you really, really want to play, you shouldn't let a few $100 on a hotel room decide whether you're going to play it or not. And if there's a tournament you don't want to play, you shouldn't let a few $100 influence your decision to play instead.
So also interesting, I don't know if you can talk about the health problems if you want, but I mean, it's interesting, I knew you since you were a young pup, and now, you're getting to an age where you're fighting with these very young kids. And like you said, the training gets stronger every generation. And I'm wondering, are you feeling like an old man at this point? And how does that
Yeah, I
affect?
mean, so I just played Sharjah Masters where I tied for first. My opponent's average age was 21. My three co-champions, because four-way tied for first, my three co-champions were 17, 17, and 22.
Right.
I really was an old man there. Now, I think older players just don't play opens because they know they'll get slaughtered. That's just sort of been my experience. I know that's often why I've been avoiding opens. I played in Sharjah, so it was explicitly 2,500 plus. But I'm fully confident that every generation is always going to be better than the one that came before it. I think the guys today, I mean, I remember when I was playing the US Junior and like Ray was the only grandmaster and I was like 2,500. I mean, I should have been a grandmaster, but like even still, like 2,510, it's not, I mean, now like 2,510, you might not even qualify. Like it's that strong.
When I played the US Junior, you had to be like 2,300 or so.
I mean, actually,
Like
I played,
2,350.
we had those as well. We had like, Parker Zhao and Warren Harper and
Okay.
that, like I was at the top, but at 25, like 10, but I mean, these guys are just much, much stronger. And there's one anecdote I was sharing with David, and maybe it's not nice to tell this story about him, but I will, because it's not supposed to be, it's not meant to be degrading or
You could leave
insulting.
out his name if you want.
Okay, but people will know.
Okay.
So I was the first time I played on the U.S. national team for the Pan American in Brazil. I was playing with Ray and Alex Lunderman and Akobian and Onistruk. And Akobian and Onistruk were both very nice. They were excellent teammates. They played well. They were respectful. They didn't talk down to us, but neither one of them had any particular interest in what Ray or I had to say about chess improvement or what we thought about training. And there's no doubt that both Akobian and Onistruk were better than me and Ray at the time, like unquestionably. But there's the fact that they didn't really have any interest in how we were approaching training. I think to some degree shot them in the foot. And now you look at, I mean, Onistruk, of course, is well past peak, and so is Akobian. But if you still take, peak Robson and Shankland against peak Akobian and Onistruk, I think it's pretty clear who ended up stronger. A big part of that is that Ray and I had more opportunity than the people who came before us. But I do think that these guys, not just Akobian and Onistruk, but like in general, that players of that generation could have done themselves a favor by looking a bit more at what the youth were doing and trying to learn from them. And I know that for myself, I sort of figured this out not that long ago, and I've started working with a couple of guys who are, like around 19, 20 years old. And it's really interesting. I mean, even the ones I'm still quite a bit better than, like there's things they do better than me, and there's things that I do better than them. And I mean, let's just say like after a recent training camp, I had a huge result, and one of the guys I worked with had a huge result. We were totally different players of totally different eras, but I think that a lot of old guys are very hesitant to admit that the next generation is stronger. They want to talk about rating inflation, which at this day and age is the most outrageous thing you could imagine.
Yeah.
But like, just it's not a comforting thought to think like all these kids today are just so much better than me, or they're going to be so much better than me, and they're already a little better than me now. And but if I was at my peak, like no, it's crap. Like we all know that like the older guys are going to be worse. And I think being willing to learn from what the younger players have to offer is a very important skill for an aging player, and one that I've embraced recently, and I'm incredibly grateful for the lessons I've learned from some of my younger colleagues and the training time I've had with them.
Like what kind of stuff are you picking up?
Some sort of more intuitive styles of play, a different sense of when to ignore the computer, a different sense of when is important to calculate, which endgames are important to memorize and which are not, things like that. It's hard to explain it. I don't want to get too much into all of my deep secrets, but that's sort of a basic level of it, for example.
Okay.
I think in general it can be hard to try and like relearn something as you get older. You're less and less confident in your plasticity and flexibility and your ability to do what you're saying you're doing. So it may sometimes just be out of like, not feeling like you can do it anymore.
Yeah. So
That you wouldn't try to reshape things. I'm going to do a full reshaping. So
okay, but someone says relative inactivity aside, Vishy seems to have kept up a lot. Yes and no. There was a time when he was clearly like, I guess Kasparov wasn't playing, but like of active chess players, he was just clearly the best chess player in the world. He's still very good, but like there's no way he's anywhere near as strong as he was. This is just part of aging. I mean, he's gotten worse, and all the young players have gotten better. I mean, Vishy's amazing. Like if I can age as well as him and keep playing chess into that age at something at least semi comparable to the level I was at, I'll be a very, very happy man. But you can't tell me that he hasn't aged or that.
No, I don't think they're trying to say he hasn't aged. I think they might be wondering whether Vishy has done some learning from the younger generation.
I wouldn't know.
Whether his chess hasn't evolved. Yeah. Obviously, you're going to lose some steps as you go past 40 and then 50. but like maybe he's also managed to learn some
I
things.
don't know. I've never worked with Vishay. I've only played him once, so I just don't know.
Yeah.
Did you recently get mated? Well, it's time to join the ChessDojo training program. Or maybe you just enjoy this fine content. Give us some money on the Patreon. I need to keep the lights on, and with inflation, it's really hard for Kostya to be buying that avocado toast. Well, and Dina, thank you for rating us. We needed needed some numbers here. We're talking with Sam about getting old, making money. We're talking about all the old man stuff today. Getting old, making money, the young pups who are destroying everything. You know, we're a real reactionary
Well,
conversation.
I wouldn't say they're destroying everything.
I
I
was
think
just
they're
making
an
fun.
incredible generation that we can learn a lot from, and I've given a lot to chess, and I'm really enjoying my time training and playing with them.
Yeah.
And I'm not salty that they're better than us. Like, as I said, every generation is always going to be better than the one that came before it. That's a sign the world's getting better, and that's a good thing.
Sam, can I ask you
Yeah.
about balancing your training? You're talking a lot about like teaching people, and then of course you need to have time for training yourself.
Mhm.
How do you manage that? Because obviously you can't take on endless
So
amount of students.
a big part of it. So part of it is just I charge a disgusting amount of money, which thins the masses. Supply and demand economics at work, they don't always hold up, but here they sort of have. But also I try to time my lessons very appropriately. So when I'm at home, I really try to make sure that all my teaching is done by noon at the very latest. I really prefer teaching in the morning. It forces me to get up and get out of bed and has me do the less important or less demanding things for my own improvement first. And then as long as I have everything after lunch, a full afternoon and evening open for myself, and I hopefully got a little bit out of the lessons I taught in the morning, I think really trying to get your lessons done early in the day is helpful. And to that effect, I'm very glad that I live in California because, I can teach kids on the East Coast or something at, 10 a.m. for me, no problem. I can teach people in Europe at 9 a.m. for me, no problem. If I was like when I'm here in Europe, I've been with David for 2 days. I've only taught 1 hour in one of these 2 days, but it was at 6 o'clock tonight. It was kind of annoying. You guys had to wait because of it, yeah, sort of sucks.
Yeah. And so also for your training, then your training can all be done in one chunk because you don't have to stop for an hour to do it.
Exactly. And or two chunks if I want to break for the gym, which you should. But yeah, like I definitely get better training done in the US and specifically in California. And when I'm abroad, if I want training to be good, I often have to teach a bit less, which is fine. But yeah.
Sam, we have a question that I'm also interested in. What are your goals in particular? Like, what is a realistic goal for you, do you think, going forward?
So I have 4 goals that I would like to achieve. I would like to make it to the top 10. I would like to win the US championship again. I would like to beat Magnus in any time control, but face to face. I don't want it to be online. I want him to shake my hand when I win. What was the 4th one? Oh, I could have sworn there were 4.
There were 4.
Remember what the 4th one was? It's late. It was win the US championship.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Play the candidates tournament.
Yeah, play the candidates. Yeah.
Okay.
So those are the 4 that I'm trying to reach. Some people might say that's unrealistic for me given my age and that I've dropped, but I truly do believe I'm still 27-30 strength, and that once I get to playing more and I solve my health issues, I think I'm just that strong. And so I think time will fix that. But 27-30 isn't yet top 10, and you will have to improve further beyond that. And then even once you're in the top 10, getting to the candidates is anything but certain. And also beating Magnus takes quite a bit of luck because there's most of the games that Magnus plays, he will not give you a chance to beat him. And it's very few chances. You're going to get very few chances. And if he's going to give you a chance in the game, it's almost certainly just going to be one. And you've got to be ready, and then you've got to be perfect. Magnus is not perfect, but in order to beat him, I think you almost have to be.
And is the idea that you have to make all 4 of these goals, or that by having 4 goals, if you make 1 or 2 of them, that's good?
I mean, I would be happy with making as many as I can. I've always believed in setting lofty goals and not being disappointed if you fail to reach them. I mean, what do they say? If you shoot for the stars and land on the moon, that's better than shooting for the moon and landing in space, right? I mean,
I guess so.
Yeah. So I just
Either way, you die really fast.
that's fair, but you get what I mean. Like it's If my goal is to make it to the top 10 and I end up getting to like top 50, if I get to number 15, that's going to make me a happier person than if my goal is to hit number 20 again. And then
you got there?
yeah. Like, so failing a more lofty goal, but passing a lesser goal, I think is going to make you happier than just succeeding at a lesser goal.
And Sam, for your fans, you don't have to talk about it. What happened? What was the health issue?
I'd rather not speak about that now. There will be a time when I will, but
Okay.
I don't want to discuss the details of it now.
Okay.
I promise it will come out at some point.
Well, that's fine. You don't have to say. It's one thing is it's kind of like one thing that makes chess so much like a sport to me is like you think like Ding Liren had the bike accident, right? Vladimir Kramnik had some weird neurological thing going on. So we've had like a bunch of people kind of around your age having some kind of thing happen to them, that was very traumatic for their chess.
Yeah. We had a really interesting question early on, which I think fits well with our general theme,
Okay.
which was from Dripman. He asked about like at what rating should somebody consider like they've got a chance to sort of not go to college or like really go
not
for
going
it,
to
like try to
college.
become a professional.
Not going to college is a big decision. Now, I get that like education is different across the world, but I would definitely say you do not want to go through life an uneducated human being. Now, that is not to say that if you went to high school and learned a lot there and you can learn a lot from your travels and in the world and talk to people and read, you can still be an educated person without going to college. It's not an absolute must, but I think you'd want to be pretty darn confident in yourself, not just in your abilities, but also you're really sure that this is something that you want to do forever and that you believe you're sufficiently well adjusted and rounded to have a fulfilling life. I think there's two parts to it. I think it's much more about that personality and decision making than it is about your actual strength.
But 4 years of college, I mean, you did it. So I can ask you, you don't think that like hurt where you got in the chess world so far?
I don't.
Because that's a big chunk of time at a critical.
But I was also
point in
playing a
someone's
lot.
life, right?
I mean, there's college and there's college. It's one thing if I was in like the most demanding program there's ever been and doing graduate school for it too. But I was playing a fair amount. I mean, I played multiple events in Europe during the semester. I mean, it was easy for me because I was really good. And so like I could point to articles and like, oh, I'm playing on the US national team for the first time. My professors would just get over it. But there's also, I think the threshold for I'll take a gap year or even 2 gap years is very, very low. I think you can absolutely do that. And I certainly would encourage everybody would. I think there's a lot of people who go to college, at least in the US nowadays, just because that's sort of what you're supposed to do and they don't know why and they don't know much about the world. And I think I got a much more out of my college experience having spent a year living on my own with a couple of lunatics in the GM house. Yeah, so someone's like, if you're able to travel to Europe multiple times a semester to play chess, you're already pretty privileged on it. Yeah, okay, but I was also 2,600. So, like, I mean, I was making money while I was in school. But my freshman year of college, I was teaching 12 hours a week. Most people had an on-campus job. I just taught 4 hours Tuesday nights, 4 hours Thursday nights, and 4 hours Friday afternoons. That was me.
I taught 10 hours a week in college.
Yeah, so it's pretty similar. Right? I mean,
yeah.
But
you've probably always worked a little harder than me.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I have my lazy moments.
Yeah.
But
okay, so when we're talking, I mean, our topic overall is like how people should ration their budget, their time, and their energy and their money. So you think, like, let's say somebody's 24, 2,500 as a teenager, and they're reaching college age, they could go for a gap year.
Yeah. Well, what I would say is that while college might hurt your chances to become number 1 in the world, I think unless you're like already like crazy strong, and I think I showed you can still go to college and make tremendous progress while you're there and afterwards and become world elite. But I would say that if in any way your career is likely to be shaped by giving lessons or producing content or streaming, college is going to be a massive advantage. I mean, can you tell me one like wildly successful chess personality who didn't go to college? Like, and not a top chess player, but like.
I don't know if they did or didn't, so I can't tell you.
But okay, well, I mean, the Botes went to Stanford for sure, right? I think Eric Hansen went to college. Daniel certainly did.
Yeah.
You did.
Hikaru didn't. Hikaru didn't go to no college.
But he was a top player first.
Uh-huh.
He was a player. Like he became a chess
I
entertainer
think
on top
he
of
dropped
player.
out, right? He went to college, but he
And
dropped
dropped
out.
out. But he also had a different route because he did not go from, you know, aspire to be a top player, fail to make it, and then go into training or streaming. He made it as a top player and then added streaming on top of it. But for anyone who's like not making their money explicitly from playing or from playing, not making money from playing at all, and are just making money from content or teaching, the best ones by far are college educated.
Interesting. Okay.
How about Feingold, Ben Feingold? I honestly don't know. Did he go to school?
I don't know either. I suspect he probably did, but I don't know.
And a lot of these kids are starting to stream, as kids, right?
Yeah.
You got Neiman was streaming like when he was in high school, right? And then, that was a whole different thing. Yeah.
Yeah, someone says Gotham has a stats degree. Yeah, like I mean, you're looking at the most like popular chess creators basically who are not pro players. I think essentially all of them went to college, right? I mean, I certainly nobody has, yeah, someone says Ben Feingold was educated at Wayne State University. Like, I'm not super in touch with who like the most common or popular chess streamers are. I just don't know. But so far I haven't yet seen a name somebody has given of a top streamer or content creator or coach that did not go to college education.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, I mean, sure, there's plenty of top players that didn't go to college. I don't think there's any like top content creators that did. So keep that in mind.
Would you give any minimum rating for who should take a gap year to pursue chess?
No, absolutely not.
Anybody
Yeah.
who's passionate about it.
I think gap years are good for anybody, period. If you're 1200, my suspicion is you can probably make better use of your gap year time with something that you're more proficient at. But I think a gap year before college, I mean, it used to be a thing that like everybody was working before school. They'd be working to get money for school, or they would, I mean, there's programs where people like couldn't afford to college. They'd join the army for 5 years, and then the army would pay for their school later. I mean, and in other countries, like as well, college is just something you do after you work. Like I'm a big believer in like do something after high school, experience the world, and then decide what you want to learn from higher education.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe in Europe, I was hearing gap years are very, very common before college. Like
Yeah,
expected.
I'm
Basically.
extremely glad that I did one myself, and I would strongly recommend it for everyone else. You learn a lot from living on your own and managing yourself.
How about coaching? Coaching can be expensive, right? We've said that you need to play to become a better player.
Right.
So you basically said like, hey, however much money you have to earn to be able to play in some tournaments, you need to play in tournaments. But
Right.
what about coaching? That would be maybe the second biggest expense you could have if you're trying to push into the professional.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think about like in that gap year that I took between high school and college, we had a training camp with Levsakis and we had one with Mikolevsky. And so I definitely found they were both helpful. I guess Jesse, you were part of that. Were you part of those too? Yeah,
Yeah.
so being able to do group sessions is good. I mean, I know that a lot of coaches, myself included, will just be much cheaper per hour if you do like big long sessions. But I think a lot of coaches are not super helpful these days. I mean, I have my own style, which works for some people, doesn't work for others, and I don't necessarily want to say I'm just better. I mean, different students will require different kinds of styles from their trainers, but I think that you should have a coach that not only is really good in terms of their knowledge of chess and their ability to guide you in the right direction, but also really believes in you and wants you to succeed and cares about your well-being as a player and doesn't just see you as, hey, you're $100 bill number one, you're $100 bill number two, you're number three, and like that's just all they care about you. And so in that regard, I think also it's important for a good coach to not have that many students as well.
But you've paid. I mean, I know you worked with Augard and some other people, right? So that's been a real continued expense for you, right?
Yeah, so I started working with Jakob when I got the Sanford Fellowship. I hadn't had a full coach basically ever. I mean, I'd worked a little bit with Josh. I worked a little bit with Vinay. I worked a little bit with Kaidanov, but never for more than like a few months, never more than like an hour a week. And then when I got the Sanford Fellowship and I had money at my disposal, I hired Jakob. And by the time I was done with the Sanford Fellowship, I was well established on the U.S. Olympic team, and I was winning a lot of tournaments and making a lot of money, and I just started paying him myself, and I've been paying him myself ever since. But yeah, I mean, a good coach is important, and it's good to find ways to make it cost effective. Another thing I would say is it's very important to find good ways to learn from your peers. And if you can ever find a way to have a relationship where you exchange services for services with no money changing hands in between, that's really, really helpful. So like, I know that I put together work groups when I was in college with two other strong players, Mackenzie Molnar and Victor Shen, both of whom are not really playing so much anymore. But I put together a work group with the three of us where, let's say we wanted to learn the Nidorf or something. I would divide up the tasks. We would say, like, someone's going to cover bishop g5, someone's going to cover bishop e3. We do it week by week by week. And then once per week, we would have a meeting, which would usually last around 3 hours, where each person would present their analysis to the group. And we were expected to do really, really, really good analysis. And at some point, like, we just started killing everyone, like, really fast. And I was incredibly grateful for the work they did. And this relationship that I had with my peers, and yeah, I was the strongest player of the group even then, but like, I certainly saw it as a relationship of equals. No money was ever changing hands. We had equal votes in what we were covering. Being able to learn from your peers is incredibly valuable, and also is, I guess, very social as well, and in what can otherwise be a really lonely game. And I definitely think that while a good pupil trainer relationship is important, having a very good relationship with your peers and a way to know which ones of your peers you want to work with in a constructive way is very, very important too. So someone's asking, does the majority of top chess players come from wealthy families? In a word, yes. You need to make about $50,000 a year to be in the top 1% of mankind. Yes. I think just about everybody is from either a wealthy family or a wealthy by worldly standards, or has had a lot of support from like their local federation or local government or something. Like, I mean, if I'm thinking about the kinds of expenses it took, my parents probably spent about $100,000 on chess throughout my entire childhood, which across, an entire childhood, it's not like they were spending oceans upon oceans upon oceans of money. It might only have averaged like 10,000 a year in the years that mattered. But like, $10,000 a year, if the top 1% of humanity is $50,000 a year, yes, top chess players had to have money. Like, it's a little different now that the internet's around and it makes it easier to train with less, but I definitely think that it's not just chess players. Almost any top athlete probably came from a fair amount of privilege.
That's interesting, yeah. Okay. That was
Alrighty.
good.
Well,
yeah.
great talk.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing before we call it a day.
All
What,
right.
in your opinion, is the best age to introduce chess to a child? I would say approximately a month and a half before birth. There we go. Fetus is sufficiently developed at that point that you can teach it lessons.
Good call. Good call. And are you available for those lessons? Do fetuses get a discount?
I don't know.
The Fetus Whisper, Sam Shankland.
Okay. All right. Good to see everybody. Have a good rest of your day, y'all.
All right, bye.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, for joining us.